Hello guys, so today we will be talking about how American influence will gradually fade in Asia if Donald Trump actually hit Asia with high tariff. There is so much billions to mention, so please pay attention and don't get confused with so much billions. Now let's begin. Donald Trump's tariff crusade is a reckless Molotov cocktail lobbed straight into Asia's economic heart, and the fallout's a glorious mess of backstabbing and betrayal that's handing China the keys to the continent on a silver platter. On one side, you've got Trump and his MAGA diehards, chest-thumping patriots, who think slapping $250 billion in duties on Chinese goods and threatening Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan with more is some genius flex to bring back American greatness. They're delusional, blind to how they're torching U.S. influence faster than a California wildfire, leaving allies to grovel at Xi Jinping's feet for scraps. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer swaggering like he's winning, but he's just the arsonist, grinning while the house burns down. America's house. Flip the coin, and you've got the spineless Asian leaders Modi, Kishida, Marcos, who cry foul at Trump's bullying while secretly licking China's boots for a lifeline. They're whining about U.S. tariffs costing them billions. $5 billion here for India's drugs, $6 billion there for Taiwan's chips, like they're innocent victims, not opportunistic rats jumping ship. Vietnam's Pham Minh Chinh and Thailand's Srettha Thavisin are already signing $10 billion deals with Beijing, pretending it's pragmatism when it's just cowardice dressed up as strategy. They're not fighting back. They're bending over, letting China turn them into pawns while the U.S. flails like a drunk uncle at a wedding. Both sides are a disgrace. Trump's a bull in a China shop, smashing decades of alliances with his tariff tantrum, and Asia's elite are gutless sellouts trading sovereignty for yuan. The U.S. thinks it's still the world's bully pulpit, but it's a fading has-been, too arrogant to see China's laughing all the way to the bank. Meanwhile, Asia's leaders preach self-reliance while chaining themselves to Beijing's Belt and Road leash. Pathetic. This isn't a trade war, it's a clown show where everyone's a loser except Xi, who's sipping tea and watching the chaos unfold. Buckle up, because this is just the start of the carnage. Trump's tariffs aren't just numbers. They're a seismic shift, screwing over farmers in Iowa, chip makers in Seoul, and factory workers in Hanoi, all while China builds an empire on the ashes. We're diving deep into this dumpster fire, exposing every dirty deal and dumb-ass decision. Stay with us till the end. You won't believe how interesting this gets. Hello and welcome back to Innovative Check YouTube channel, where we delve into the innovative and transformative projects changing our world. If you're new to the channel and enjoy learning about innovation stories around the world, you've come to the right place. Please subscribe, like, and comment to help boost our videos on YouTube. Donald Trump's return to the White House in January 2025 has brought with it a renewed fervor for tariffs, a policy he's wielded like a blunt instrument to hammer away at perceived trade imbalances. Asia, with its economic powerhouses like China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and India, has found itself squarely in his sights. The U.S. president's latest salvo, a 10% tariff on Chinese imports announced in early February, with promises of more to come, has sent shockwaves through the region's markets. Manufacturers of everything from Japanese cars to Taiwanese semiconductors are scrambling, while China, the big dog in the room, smirks from the sidelines. Poised to snatch up influence the U.S. is leaving on the table. Take a look at what's happening in Seoul and Tokyo. South Korean automakers like Hyundai are staring down the barrel of potential duties that could jack up the price of their exports to the U.S. by thousands of dollars per vehicle. Meanwhile, Taiwan's TSMC, the world's leading semiconductor producer, is sweating over how Trump's threats of 15% tariffs on tech imports might hit their $40 billion annual revenue stream from America. India's pharmaceutical giants, which supply nearly half of the U.S. generic drugs, aren't sleeping easy either. New levies could add $5 billion in costs, according to estimates from the Indian Commerce Ministry. This isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet, it's about power slipping through Uncle Sam's fingers. Moves could backfire spectacularly by pushing Asian allies closer to China's orbit. She's not wrong. Look at Vietnam, long a U.S. darling for its cheap labor and anti-China stance. They're now seeing a flood of Chinese firms setting up shop, with investments topping $15 billion last year alone, according to Hanoi's trade ministry. This isn't some altruistic move by Beijing. It's chess, not charity. Chinese companies like Huawei and BYD are dodging U.S. tariffs by rerouting production through places like Malaysia and Thailand, where lax oversight lets them slap a Made in ASEAN label on goods and sneak past Trump's levies. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo called it a gaping loophole during a February 15 testimony to Congress, estimating it's costing the U.S. $8 billion in lost tariff revenue annually. But here's the kicker. Those Southeast Asian nations aren't just playing host. They're tying their economic futures to China's Belt and Road gravy train, sidelining the U.S. in the process. Then there's the currency game. Trump's Treasury Department, under Yellen's reluctant watch, has slapped China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Vietnam onto its currency manipulation watch list as of February 20, 2025. The accusation they're keeping their currencies artificially low to undercut U.S. exporters. Japan's yen has dipped 5% against the dollar since Trump's inauguration, and South Korea's won isn't far behind. But instead of bowing to pressure, these countries are huddling closer to Chinese yuan-based trade networks. Just last week, Seoul inked a $10 billion deal with Beijing to settle trade in local currencies, bypassing the dollar altogether. The U.S. is playing a dangerous game of chicken with its tariffs, and Asia's not blinking first. Trump's obsession with reciprocal tariffs, taxing imports based on what other countries charge U.S. goods, sounds tough on the campaign trail, but it's a slow-motion disaster in practice. Take India, for instance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has leaned hard into its Make in India push, exporting $50 billion worth of pharmaceuticals and tech to the U.S. in 2024 alone. Trump's threat of a 12% tariff on those goods, floated by Lighthizer in a Fox News interview on February 18, 2025, didn't scare New Delhi into submission. Instead, India retaliated with a $2 billion tax on U.S. bourbon, soybeans, and Harley-Davidson bikes, pet projects of Trump's red state base. Now, U.S. farmers in Iowa are screaming bloody murder, and Modi's cozying up to China for a $20 billion trade lifeline. Just a quick reminder to hit the like button below. YouTube has been restricting my videos a lot recently because of bots, so your like does help out this video massively in terms of the algorithm in YouTube. South Korea is another case study in how Trump's bluster is backfiring. Seoul's trade ministry, led by Minister An Duk-gun, announced a $249.3 billion financing package on February 21 to prop up exporters like Samsung and LG against U.S. tariffs. That's a hefty chunk of change, about 15% of South Korea's GDP, but it's not aimed at kissing Washington's ring. Half of that cash is earmarked for new factories in China's Pearl River Delta, where Samsung's already shifting its OLED screen production. Why? Beijing's offering tax breaks and a market of 1.4 billion consumers that doesn't come with Trump's baggage. The U.S. gets a middle finger, and China gets a tighter grip on the supply chain. Even Taiwan, the U.S.'s golden child in the chip wars, is hedging its bets. TSMC CEO C.C. Wei told investors on February 19 that Trump's tariff threats, potentially slapping $6 billion in duties on their U.S.-bound chips, might force them to rethink their $65 billion Arizona factory investment. Guess where they're looking instead? Shanghai, where China's dangling subsidies worth $10 billion to lure TSMC's cutting-edge tech. If that happens, the U.S. loses not just economic leverage, but a strategic chokehold on semiconductors, handing Xi Jinping a win he couldn't have scripted better himself. The deeper you dig into Trump's tariff gambit, the clearer it becomes that the U.S. is torching its own credibility in Asia, while China lights the way forward. Japan's a perfect example of how this is playing out. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's administration is staring at a $30 billion hit to its auto exports if Trump's proposed 15% tariff on foreign cars lands, and Lighthizer's been dropping hints it's coming by March. Toyota and Honda, which ship nearly 2 million vehicles to the U.S. annually, aren't waiting around to find out. They've already inked deals worth $12 billion with China's CATL to source batteries for electric vehicles, shifting supply chains away from American soil. Kishida's trade minister, Kin Saito, admitted in a February 22 press conference that the U.S. market's reliability is fading, a polite way of saying Japan's looking east, not west. Then there's the chaos in Southeast Asia, where Trump's tariffs are turning allies into opportunists. Thailand's economy, heavily reliant on exports like rice and electronics, took a $5 billion punch last year when Chinese goods flooded in, redirected from the U.S. to dodge tariffs. Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin's government is now mulling a 20% tariff on Chinese imports to protect local firms. But here's the twist. They're also negotiating a $15 billion free trade pact with Beijing to lock in infrastructure cash. Indonesia's doing the same dance. President Prabowo Subianto's team is fast-tracking a $10 billion nickel deal with China's Tsingshan Holding Group, betting on electric vehicle batteries to offset U.S. trade losses. The U.S. gets left out in the cold, muttering about fair play while China builds roads and factories. Singapore, the region's financial hub, is another domino wobbling toward China. Trump's tariffs on semiconductors, potentially costing the city-state $3 billion in exports, have pushed Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to pivot. On February 20, Singapore signed an $8 billion trade zone pact with Malaysia, courting Chinese firms like Tencent to set up shop. U.S. companies like Intel, which have leaned on Singapore for decades, are now competing with Beijing's deep pockets. Commerce Secretary Raimondo griped to the Senate last week that Asia's slipping away, but she's got no fix. Trump's team is too busy slapping duties on allies to notice the bigger picture. If you are enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to subscribe, share the video, and comment. The U.S. tariff tantrum is handing China a golden ticket to rewrite Asia's economic map, and the cracks are showing everywhere. Look at the Philippines. Long a U.S. military foothold in the Pacific, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is juggling Trump's 10% tariff hike on agricultural imports like mangoes and tuna, which hit Manila with a $2 billion loss in 2024 projections, instead of doubling down on Washington, and to bull down the Florida prices on fentanyl, oil, and $2 billion loss in 2024 projections. Instead of doubling down on Washington, Marcos struck a $5 billion fisheries deal with China on February 17, 2025, letting Beijing's trawlers into disputed waters in exchange for cash and jobs. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin fumed in a Pentagon briefing that it's a strategic misstep. But the Philippines isn't betting on U.S. goodwill when tariffs are strangling its farmers. Malaysia is another domino falling China's way. Trump's duties on electronics, adding $4 billion in costs to firms like Western Digital, have pushed Kuala Lumpur to roll out the red carpet for Chinese tech giant Xiaomi, which pledged $7 billion for a new factory last month. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's administration is touting it as a game changer. But the real winner is Beijing, locking in another piece of the 5G puzzle. While the U.S. obsesses over steel tariffs, Trade Representative Lighthizer response, a vague threat of further action. In a February 21 memo that's got no teeth, Malaysia's already too deep in China's pocket to care. Vietnam's story is even juicier. Hanoi's been a poster child for U.S. efforts to counter China, with companies like Apple pumping $16 billion into factories there since 2020. But Trump's tariffs on textiles and footwear, slapping $3 billion in extra costs, have soured the vibe. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh didn't waste time. On February 19th, he signed a $10 billion trade pact with China's Alibaba to boost e-commerce, shrugging off U.S. pleas to stay the course. Yellen's team at Treasury called it a betrayal in private talks, per a leaked memo. But Vietnam's not here for loyalty, it's here for survival. And China's the one with the lifeline. India's pharmaceutical mess-ups, the anti-Trump's 12% tariff threat on generics could tack $5 billion onto costs for firms like Sun Pharma, which supply 40% of America's pills. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal fired back on February 20 with a $3 billion retaliatory tax on U.S. coal and almonds, but he's also courting China for a $15 billion chemical deal to keep factories humming. The U.S. moralizing about fair trade rings hollow when India's staring at empty shelves. China's ready to step in with raw materials and no lectures. Trump's inner circle, including advisor Peter Navarro, is scrambling to fix this, but they're too late to the party. South Korea's chip giants are feeling the heat too. Samsung and SK Hynix, which ship $20 billion in memory chips to the US yearly, face Trump's 15% semiconductor tariff looming like a guillotine. Trade Minister An Duk-jun's $249.3 billion rescue package is a lifeline, but $100 billion of it's flowing to China for joint ventures. Think Guangdong's shiny new Beijing's offering $8 billion in tax breaks to sweeten the deal, and Seoul's biting. Raimondo's complaints to Congress last week about losing the tech edge fall flat when Trump's the one pushing allies into China's arms. Thailand's rice paddies are next in line. Trump's tariffs on agricultural goods adding $1.5 billion in costs have Thai exporters reeling, with shipments to the U.S. down 20% since January. Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin's answer: a $12 billion trade pivot to China signed on February 22, locking in rice and rubber exports for Beijing stockpiles. The U.S. gets a polite thanks but no thanks. While China's Belt and Road trucks roll in with cash, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack's team is monitoring this per a February 23 statement, but monitoring won't undo the damage Thailand's already gone. Taiwan's TSMC saga rounds it out. Trump's $6 billion tariff threat on chips has CEO C.C. Ewei eyeing China's $10 billion subsidy carrot, even as the U.S. begs for more Arizona plants. A February 18 shareholder call saw Wei hint at new options in Shanghai options that could gut U.S. leverage in the chip war. Defense Secretary Austin's warnings about national security risks are loud, but Trump's tariff hammer is drowning them out. China's grinning, and the U.S. is left holding a bag of broken promises. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome your thoughts and questions on this complex and vital subject. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get exclusive videos about how phenomenally China is developing and growing its influence. Your subscriptions and likes motivate us to generate more content, so please keep supporting us. Check out this video showing on your screen right now, and I will see you on the other side.